Welcome to the Odd Shoot. I'm your host, Beefloaf. This show is being sponsored by our friends, Punky's Pizza and Pasta, located at 2600 South Wallace, my personal favorite eatery in the neighborhood. They have the best selections of pizzas and pastas, as well as sandwiches and salads of any spot in Bridgeport. Currently, they have what they're calling the Pizza Happy Hour, Mondays and Tuesdays only, between 4 p.m. and 9 p.m. You order a pizza from Punky's, and you get 50% off. Yes, you heard that correctly. 50% off pizzas ordered Mondays and Tuesdays between 4 p.m. and 9 p.m. How in the world can you get the best pizza in Bridgeport for 50% off? The Pizza Happy Hour. Hit the website, punkyspizza.com, for all your carryout or delivery needs, or to cater your next party. Or you can call 312-842-2100. The Scarlotta family will take care of you. Punky's Pizza and Pasta. The 108ers are hosting a live event Tuesday, June 17th. That's tomorrow, actually, at 5 p.m. at Cork at the Park, 3259 South Princeton, the Beefloaf birthday party. We'll be performing a live abbreviated podcast and enjoying $5 Twisted Teas and $5 Fireball shots, from what I'm hearing, for my birthday before we head over to Sox Park to watch the battle between the Sox and St. Louis Cardinals at 6:40 p.m. Remember, Cork at the Park, 3259 South Princeton. Come and join us. There'll be drink specials, food. We'll be giving away White Sox goodies. However, absolutely no fucking bingo. Tuesday, June 17th. That's tomorrow, 5 p.m. Be there. This show is also powered by you, loyal 108 supporter. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Feel free to tickle the undercarriage in the process. Like, turn on notifications, and definitely super chat, because that's how we continue to get paid and make the content you know and love. Tonight's guest needs no introduction. He's an OG of the 108 crew, a man of questionable character, the person who rooted hardest against me last year from winning the steak dinner bet, and a Jose Quintana denier. Aloha, Mr. Hand. Welcome to the Au Jus, my friend.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And by the way, happy early birthday.
Thank you, my friend. Appreciate that. 47 tomorrow. I'll be 47 years old. It's not a special birthday, but you know, hey, it's always good when you notch one more on there. You may still breathing. That's the way I look at it, you know?
Yeah, exactly. That's how you got to look at it.
So, Mr. We have a veritable ton of topics to talk about today. We've been talking a little bit about this in the stands. And I was mentioning to someone the other day, they were asking me about you. I said, yeah, he sits directly behind me at Sox Park. So the formation, Chorizy-E's to my left, generally, unless my daughter shows up to the game. You are directly behind me, so we talk a lot during the game. But
and Josh Nelson right off to the left of me.
It's kind of there, and you know, my Sox Summer's floating around wherever we can get free shit, and Wally Money's a little further back. You know,
screaming in all our ears. Yeah,
that's the general formation there. But I wanted to ask you, since you do a lot of work with the Hall of Fame, and there's been some news lately with the Hall of Fame. In mid-May, Rob Manfred lifted lifetime bans for 17 individuals, including most noteworthy Pete Rose and Shoeless Joe Jackson. Why did they do that now, Pete? Why is that coming down now?
The long and short answer of it is because Rob Manfred is a coward. And I'll explain the rationale behind that. Because right now, what would happen is they would not be eligible to be reviewed by the committees until 2028.
Okay.
Because the Classic Committee, which is the committee that looks at players whose, I think they word it, their significant impact was before 1980, which they certainly qualify.
Both guys, yeah.
Right. There's three guys out of the list of players who were banned who in theory would be eligible for that committee.
Okay.
Pete Rose, Shoeless Joe, and Eddie Sakati.
Okay.
Sika, however you pronounce it. The rest, if you talk about it, and I know a lot of people want to know about Buck Weaver. Buck Weaver only had 9 years. You have to have 10 in order to qualify for this committee.
Okay.
So Buck Weaver doesn't get, unless they change the rules between now and then, which is very possible. As of right now, Buck Weaver would not be under consideration. But the reason I say he's a coward is because the Classic Era Committee just elected Dick Allen and Dave Parker. Their next iteration doesn't come up for 3 more years. So this gives Rob Manfred 3 years of not having to deal with this. Basically passing the buck.
All right. Oh, that's interesting. And so now he has a date set out in the future in which, in theory, he's supposed to roll off. Is it before then, or will he have to deal with this before that happens?
I think his goal is to roll off before then.
Before then. Okay, so now I have to deal with it. Okay. And like you said, these guys can't get elected until they have the special committee And that's still years away. So anyone who is hot to trot about these guys being in the Hall, that's going to be a while out. They got a little gestation period to wait for this, correct?
Yes, exactly. It's, like I said, it's sort of like, because obviously Pete Rose dying, passing away, that became a hot topic again. Oh, it's a lifetime ban. He's no longer alive. Why isn't he being under consideration?
Yeah.
And, you think about it. Shoeless Joe died in what, 1951, I think? And he was on that list all this time. So, but now they change it. I think it's cowardice. And also, to be completely honest, I think part of it is it's kind of hard to still hold Pete and Shoeless Joe and, the Black Sox, so to speak. And if you look at the players, most of the players who were reinstated, it was gambling related.
Okay.
The 8 Black Sox were reinstated. There were a couple other players on that list who were reinstated that had gambling affiliations, questions, things of that nature. A lot of it in the 20s, so to speak.
Okay.
So I think it's kind of hard. It's getting harder for baseball to justify holding them out when you're saying, oh, Pete Rose is banned in this, it has a lifetime ban for gambling. But the first pitch is brought to you by Circa Casinos.
Well, that's why I wanted to ask, Mr. Hen. Look, does this destroy the integrity of Rule 21? Rule 21 is the one that forbids these guys from betting on the game, and then you slam Pete Rose in here right now and say, well, fuck that then. This guy is eligible all of a sudden. No?
Rule 21 is in every locker room. It's something that is discussed with every player every season. No gambling on baseball. But to answer your question, no, I think the integrity of Rule 21 went out the door long before this.
Okay.
I mean,
right.
Where we sit, we look over in left field, and there's a sign for Caesar Sportsbooks, for God's sakes. So it's kind of hard to get on a moral high horse about gambling when you're taking money from casinos.
Yeah, you're taking the money, and you're like, well, it's okay for us, but you can't do that. You're not allowed to do that. Yeah. Let's get to this drink right now. Baloney says, happy birthday, Beef. He said we're celebrating all week as per tradition from the reigning 108 tourney champion. Yes. Alexis would consider it. Thank you, Baloney. Appreciate you. That's a good point on Rule 21. And I think we are at the point where it's something that, it used to be, this was the deadly sin, and maybe it's no longer the case. It was rumored that Manfred had a discussion with President Trump specifically on Pete Rose. My question for you here is, how much weight do you think the president talking to Manfred about this carried in his actual decision?
You cannot say it didn't carry any, but I don't think it carried as much as a lot of people probably think.
Okay.
And I think a lot of it has to do with in my opinion, the blatant hypocrisy of holding, having these banned players for gambling, but yet having, taking money from the casinos and everybody else. I think that was a driving force behind it. And again, to my point about Rob Manfred being a coward, I think he was trying to avoid and facing the question of, why do you have a double standard?
Right. Okay. Right. Yeah. Why are you taking this money, but then these guys can't, they can't enjoy the spoils, and especially someone like Shoeless Joe, who, Rose had definitely the gambling, but he also had you can invoke the character clause with him as well with some of his, which that's outside the spectrum of the conversation we're going to have today. But with Shoeless Joe, obviously that was someone who, it was a little murky, and it's kind of seemed like he played well. So maybe just kind of clears the way for some of these guys to get through.
Yes, absolutely agree.
Well, now, if Manfred, let's say he did maybe partially consider this a favor to the president, what is he getting in return? Is there anything MLB needs from the White House at this time and juncture? Is there anything you think he wants, or is it just a curry favor with the leader?
Yes to all the above. What I think it is there is a labor dispute coming up. And if you remember back in 94, 95, where there was talk about lifting the antitrust exemption on MLB.
Right.
This might be a way, let me throw them a bone. So hopefully they don't throw that out there during our labor issues, which I hate to break it to you folks, they're coming and they're going to be ugly.
Yeah, it's, more than likely. So now that the bans are lifted, when do these guys get in? By your estimation, Mr. Hand. So Rose and Shoeless Joe separately, you said they have to wait for separate committees, but even then, let's say their first date that they are even eligible on these additional committees is several years out. Mm-hmm. Are they getting in? Are these guys going to get in from those committees, or what do you think? How's this going to work out?
I think Shoeless Joe will get in.
Okay.
To be completely honest, because I do know that there were a lot of Hall of Famers who backed him back in the day.
Okay.
Just to give you a quick story. Ted Williams one day, and this is when Bud Selig was still the commissioner, Ted Williams cornered Bud Selig. And if you've ever seen Ted Williams, he's an imposing man. He is an imposing figure. Cornered Bud Selig and said, when are you going to let Shoeless Joe in? And Bud's answer was, well, you know, if we reinstate Shoeless Joe, then we have to reinstate Pete Rose. And Ted Williams, remember folks, Ted Williams was a Marine. Ted Williams let his opinion be known about Pete Rose, and there were a lot of four-letter expletives associated with that opinion of Pete Rose. But to your question about when do I think they'll get in, the earliest they could possibly get in is being part of the 2028 committee.
Okay.
So that would be during the winter meetings of 2028 if the schedule holds how it is now, meaning that they have these elections as part of the winter meetings.
Okay.
And what happens is you have a group of, it'll be a committee of 16 that's divided between Hall of Fame players, baseball executives, and baseball historians. And generally one of the historians will present the case for that particular player. And what you'll need to really look at is the composition of the committee. And I'll give you an example. Like when Harold Baines went in front of the committee the second time, he had Jerry Reinsdorf, Tony La Russa, Paul Beeston on this committee. Okay. And if you remember what I told you when I saw the composition of the committee, I said, he's getting in.
Yeah.
This is rigged to get him in. So you have to watch on, especially with Pete Rose, because another part of the reason why Pete Rose is eligible now, besides the fact that he's no longer here, is because there were some. Now remember, the Hall of Fame is not directly affiliated with baseball. It's not directly controlled by MLB, but there were some transcendent ambassadors who should have been unanimous Hall of Famers who basically expressed their displeasure at him even having the opportunity to.
Okay.
And when I say should be unanimous, I'm talking these are guys who transcend baseball. These are your Mount Rushmore type of Hall of Famers.
Okay.
You know, so unfortunately, several of them have passed away in the last few years. So it made it easier to try and push that forward too. I'm reading JT's question.
Yeah, he asked, do you think Shoeless Joe get in earlier if Ishbia slid a capital infusion to the right committee members? There's the Chicago way. Let's go.
It would be the Chicago way, and it would require moving the committee up, which is not beyond the realm of possibility if the dollar amount is right. But I think Shoeless Joe will get in 28.
Okay.
I really do. Now, Eddie Cicotte, however you want to pronounce it, no chance in hell. We know he took money. So that's it. Now, Pete becomes very interesting. Pete is going to be a guy, if you look at only his numbers, there's no question he's in the Hall of Fame.
Right.
No question. But there's a lot of other character issues besides the gambling. Besides the gambling, there's other character questions. You would have to look at the composition of the committee. Just to give you a couple of guys who I know who would support Pete Rose getting in, I can name a couple right now. Mike Schmidt would be one. Tony Perez would be another. Barry Larkin would be a third. So you would have to look at who's on that committee and then make an educated guess whether or not he would get in. I think it would be a tough sell. I would love to be a fly on the wall for that conversation because I'm sure it would be quite interesting.
Now, how does the committee get set Mr. Hand, is there any jockeying for this? Are there a couple people that are the arbiters of setting up the committee? How does that work? How do they get in there? Because you mentioned, with Harold Baines, they were juiced in. They had the juiced in group. They knew they were going to put who's in charge of getting the people lined up for this?
That I'm not sure. I think it alternates between, time and again. Obviously, the Hall of Fame reaches out to the respective people and says, "Do you want to be part of this? Do you want to be part of that?" And they try and do a fair and balanced, if you will, committee. But the one thing to remember, and I'm not picking on Harold. Harold is a great guy. Okay, I'm not picking.
I love Harold. Harold was one of my favorite players as a kid. Yes, I really enjoyed Harold. Yeah.
But when the owner of the White Sox happens to be on the board of directors of the Hall of Fame, it's easier to have some sway on the committee for that.
Yeah.
Just saying. I don't know why, but I'm just saying that.
Makes sense. And that one plus one equals 3 in this case. Yes, we're getting
exactly.
I agree.
Exactly. 100%. So it'll be really interesting to see what the composition of the committee is. When the time rolls around, I really want to see the composition of the committee, and then I can say he probably has a chance or no chance in hell. I can make an educated guess on one person who wants no part of this whatsoever.
Who's that?
Johnny Bench wants no part of it whatsoever.
Former teammates. No, thank you.
No, thank you. Keep me out of this one.
I love it. Let's get to this drink real quick. JT says, enjoy a $5 birthday twisted tea at Cork. He said, I owe you a penny, damn YouTube. Thanks, JT. Appreciate you, my friend. All right, let's jump off the Hall of Fame discussion. But that is something interesting to watch as that unveils that these guys are not automatic. And then when those committees roll up, everyone keep an eye on that and see what you think ends up happening.
Politics and favoritism, all that. It's almost like high school. Yeah, it's almost like high school cliques, basically.
Exactly. I love it. So I want to talk about the potential 2026 MLB labor stoppage. You've been talking about this for a year already to me and the boys, just like, you know what, this is out there. So as we can see, MLB is sort of free falling directly into post 2026 season where they're likely gonna have a labor stoppage. What's the big issues and who are the big players in those issues of a potential labor stoppage coming up?
Well, obviously, I think there's two components to it. The first component is going to be a battle between owners. Basically, your Cohens, the Dodgers ownership group versus the John Fishers and Nuttings of the world.
Yeah.
And for those who don't know, John Fisher is the owner of the A's. Bob Nutting is the owner of the Pittsburgh Pirates. Those are just, the Rays would also be in.
Those are the cheap teams. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. And basically what I think it's going to boil down to is basically the cheap teams are going to want to put in place a salary cap.
Okay.
Where, you can't have a payroll more than, and I'm just throwing a number out, $250 million, let's just say, whatever it may be, and the Cohens of the world, and this goes back to something George Steinbrenner said when they first started implementing the luxury tax and all that. And I'll say this. There was never a question on whether or not George Steinbrenner was trying to win. You can argue with the methods. You can argue with the decisions, but there was never a question about what his intention was. Right. And what he said was he doesn't have a problem paying a luxury tax as long as the money he's paying into the luxury tax goes onto the product on the fields of his competitors, not in their wallet. That's where the issue is going to lie, because they're going to say, okay, you want to put a salary cap of $250 million in place, then there needs to be a floor of, let's just say 125, I could
keep you honest. Make sure you're spending at least some of this, that you're not just rent seeking here. You're not just taking my money, putting it in your goddamn pocket, running your payroll all the way down to nothing and enjoying the spoils.
And that's why John Fisher went out and signed some of those big contracts this past offseason, because the owners were going, what the fuck?
It was Luis Severino was the main one, right? That was a big one.
They're like going, this is getting old. You're just taking the money and pocketing it. That's why he sort of like, I don't want to say threw him a bone. I think he got a visit. How does the saying go? Don't make me come and visit you again. It won't be pleasant, proverbially. But that's that's sort of what it is. That's the first battle that's going to happen. Now, it's like I said, it's owner versus it's all in the family, so to speak.
Yeah.
All in the
Now,
ownership family.
on the owner versus owner battle, do you expect, other than salary cap, do you expect any other concessions? Because the big boys, the Guggenheims, the Steinbrenners, the Cohens, they're still making a fortune from television revenue.
Yeah.
The smaller market teams, or even major market teams that the RSNs fell through on them, they are making shit. You see the White Sox trying to put up a fledgling TV network, and it's been brutal. But even the Cubs at Marquee hasn't worked out that great either.
Having problems,
yeah,
and several teams have had to have their games picked up by MLB to broadcast. Yep. I think the Reds are one. I think the Rangers are another. Those are two that immediately jump out at me for that. I think there's going to be some kind of. I don't see them try. I see them partially trying to go to a football type of model.
Okay.
TV, but the stupid ass blackout rules they need to figure that out, because there are some places that are blacked out of like 4 or 5 different teams. And it makes no damn sense why you're blacking out these different teams.
Exactly. People in Iowa can't watch anything. They're blacked out every other fucking team.
Exactly. What are they blacked out? Both Chicago teams.
Yeah, I
Milwaukee,
certain regions, I think Minnesota, I mean that. But here's what I wonder about this, though, Mr. Hand. So if they wanted to try to go to and they do kind of have the football model when it's the Fox games or whatever, they share that shit equally, right? Even if your team doesn't go on there once, you still get a share, and they whack it up. The problem here, though, is like you're starting from a standpoint when these teams are making a lot of money, a couple of them. Why would they want to give in? Why would they want to say, well, we're going to get, we got to go in with the rest of the group here? I know the old theory, like, well, the Yankees can't play themselves. You got to play some, there's got to be some teams, but where does the brokering go on? How do you get it? The teams that are making money on this and are self-sufficient, how do you get them to buy in on this? And what do they get?
Well, sport is a very interesting business model, because generally you think of a business model, you want to beat your competitors.
Correct.
Where you are, for lack of a better way to put it, you've cornered the market. You can't do that at baseball because you need your competitors to be good. Because I'll use the Yankees as an example. When the Yankees come to town, they generally draw better than who? The White Sox? Oh, hell yes, they draw better. Yeah. So you need to have a strong competitor too. And that's the argument they need to use. Now, to a certain point, I could see teams caving, but to a certain point where, we took the risks, we built this model out, we did all this work. Why are we going to give you, the old Eddie Murphy half,
Yeah, and fufu, that's the small market teams. You're right. Yeah.
Right. So they're going to have to, that's where it's going to get ugly too, is trying to figure out a reasonable approach to that where everyone is happy. I don't think everyone's ever going to be happy, to be completely honest.
Right.
And, and I have to say this, and I'm going to slam the White Sox here when I say this.
Yeah.
If the White Sox were losing all this money, you mean to tell me that they wouldn't sell out? They wouldn't sell the team to someone else and, give me a fucking break. Okay. All these teams crying poor. Oh, we're losing money. There's only really one season I could see them justified in saying they're losing money, and that was 2020,
right?
Because of the pandemic.
Yeah, no fans. I mean, that's an obvious reason. Yeah, no, absolutely. No, I agree with that. I'm not taking the side of either, but I just wonder, like, the power struggle between them. One other thought I had here, Mr. Hand, was, where do the White Sox figure in, and specifically, where does Jerry Reinsdorf, who used to be kind of a power broker among these groups, I don't know how much power he still retains as he's gotten older, and the Ishbias, where do they come in as far as this struggle, and what do you see from the, how much of the Ishbias you think we'll see as this gets going, even though they're not the controlling partners at this point?
I don't think we're going to see anything from the Ishbias.
Okay.
I think they're going to let Jerry handle it, and I think that was part of probably the negotiation. That you stay there through the labor crap because you've been through it before.
We don't know
how
it.
it works. We don't know what we're doing when it comes to this. So you stay there and you handle it. That's why 2029 in their agreement is such a key date because you should be past the labor crap, hopefully.
It'll be nuts if you're not. There might not be a team to buy.
Exactly. if you're not, basically the sport is dead. Okay. and that's when the lease on the ballpark is up.
Right.
So that's why 2029 is such a key date.
Yeah, absolutely. So, all right. So first we got owners versus owners, and
Yes.
I'm more excited for that one actually because I'm not used to it. We've seen these before, but I haven't seen them fight. So they fought a little bit last time. Where you going to got a little taste of it, but I think we're going to get it. It's going to be like a Tyson fight. But now, I just
want the five family scene in The Godfather to happen with the owners. That's what I want.
That's all you want. It's not asking for too much. I don't
right,
think.
Exactly.
But then you get past the owners squabble and you got owners versus the players.
Yeah.
At this point, Mr. Hand, what do the players have left to even offer? I feel like they've got a lot of things taken away from them at this point. What do they have left to offer? We know salary cap is on the table. Is there anything else out there that they got?
The international draft. That's about it.
Yeah.
That's the only thing I could think of unless they got some rabbit they're going to pull out of their hat. And that's the only thing I could think of is international draft. That's it. That's all they got left because they've been thoroughly beaten down since 94.
Yeah.
They have
they lose every time.
Down. Right. They lose every time. They've been beaten down. And, there's a lot of people who will say, oh, they're not dumb enough to go have a lockout. They're not dumb enough to to push back the start of the season. Right. Always remember one thing. Money makes you do stupid shit.
That's true. That's
in
true.
my life, there's two things that have made me do stupid shit: money and women. Okay, so
and this one's on the forefront here. Yeah,
yes, exactly.
Now, how does 2026 potentially? We'll see how it shakes out. It could be a long one as far as the labor struggle. How does it affect the White Sox in the short term and then also in the long term? Because the White Sox are starting. I guess they're a little bit into a full rebuild. Tear everything down to the studs. I think I had Ryan McGuffey on here a couple months ago say they're ripping up the foundation. That's how deep they're going on this type of rebuild. And so we're seeing a few buds here there, but we're not close to coming out of it. How do you think it affects the White Sox 2026, kind of short or long term?
You're not going to see any long-term deals. You're going to see one-year deals. I think the one thing that might help the White Sox in 2026, to be completely honest, I think this will help a lot of teams. It would not surprise me to see some bigger name free agents still sitting out there in February of 26 because they're going to be seeking long-term deals. Most teams are not going to want to take the risk of signing a player to a long-term deal with an uncertain labor future. So you might be able to do some vulture investing and pick up a couple of players cheap. Now, what I would do, and again, I don't have the money for this, I wish I did, is I would look at who the free agents are and say, hey, yeah, you might have wanted, $25 million a year for 5 years. I'll give you 17.5 for 3. You might be able to pick up a player here and there like that.
At a discount like that.
At a discount like that, because of the uncertainty going forward.
Yeah.
But again, and I think, honestly, if you really look at the White Sox contracts and what they have on the books beyond 26, there's almost nothing there.
No. Yeah.
Nothing. And
you got Benintendi, and that's and Robert's last option or whatever the fuck. I mean, there ain't much on there.
He's gone either in July or at the end of the season. So I don't even count Robert in that.
Right. It's just more theoretical. Yeah. But you're right. The bid ask spread could end up getting wide on these guys, especially if they want extra years. I wonder how many of the 1 year for more money than they would get AAV wise will be taken in that year as the thing gets reset and teams don't want to go long term, and players maybe don't want to go long term too. Although I would think the players would want to lock in the security, right?
I think the players who would go long term are probably your B list type of players.
Okay.
You know, oh, I'm getting this offer to lock in for 3 years instead of doing a 1-year deal. Why the hell wouldn't I take it? Like if just to use Juan Soto as an example, if Juan Soto came up for free agency after this year, I see him signing a 1-year deal.
Okay. Taking a huge amount of money and then
taking a
waiting
huge
out.
amount of money because I don't see him getting that contract he got after this season compared to what he got from the Mets last year.
Okay, got it. Yeah, teams will want some certainty too as to what the
Right.
terms are going to be in that side. Yeah, it'll be interesting to watch. It could be a really fun offseason with some weird shit happening. Maybe not as weird as Rafael Devers getting traded, but weird stuff coming. We're not going to go down there, but that was something else.
The best part of Rafael Devers getting traded, do you know where he found out he got traded at?
No.
At the airport when they were getting ready to board a flight. He had to drive back.
Hey, you, get out of here.
Shit.
That's ridiculous. All right, let's shift over to the White Sox here.
Yes.
Mr. Hand, you're one of the first people I knew that went to spring training this year. When you got back, you and I had a conversation. I asked you, what did you see? What's different about this team? And the first thing you told me, which was really interesting, you're like, Beef, they're just better positioned on defense. They seem to be in spots where they actually should be instead of like every ground ball going through. And so far this year, that has actually held through. It's one of the pleasant surprises of the White Sox is that they've been much better positioning wise. Do you still like firmly believe that's the case? And are there any other incremental improvements you're seeing from the White Sox? It's still a bad team, but any little things you're seeing they're getting better?
You're right. It's still a bad team. I mean, if you remember when I came back, I told you that, and I said they're still going to lose a lot of 3-2, 2-1 games. Right. They don't have offense, which is still holding true. Yep. Right. Incrementally, I think the pitching has been a lot better than I thought. Yeah. You know, Shane Smith looks like an absolute steal.
Oh my God. You know, Rule 5 pick. Nothing ever comes to Rule 5 picks. And then he's been good. Like, yes, crazy.
Exactly. You know, hopefully it's something that'll hold and maintain, and it's something you can build around. It's hard to say let's build around a Rule 5 pick, but at the same time, he looks pretty damn good. So I don't want to get, out in front of the skis, so to speak, and say, oh yeah, you need to sign this guy long term. No, not at all. But you got to give Chris Getz credit for that.
Agreed. Yep.
I think that is a joint Getz Bannister move. And I'm going to say this, don't discount Walker McKibben. McKibben in all of this.
Yeah.
Because look at the guys they picked up from Milwaukee. Shane Smith was a Milwaukee Rule 5. They thought they could get through. They
were sneaking through, yeah.
Right. They thought they could sneak them through. So don't discount that either. I mean, the thing I like about it, to Guff's point when he was on with you, a month or so ago, whenever it was, his point was great about they needed to tear it down. They needed to rip up the concrete and re-pour the concrete to start. Yeah. Because one of the things I had complained about for years is, and this is something I heard Josh mention on the Sox Machine podcast released last night, where there is no first-round draft pick from 2020 or before. All White Sox draft picks, first-round draft picks from 2020 and before, are either playing on another team or out of baseball.
Yeah.
Which is such an indictment, because a lot of those guys should be your quote-unquote core right now, especially during the rebuilding years. That just shows how bad their drafting was. So I understand why they had to rip up the concrete, rip up the foundation and everything else, because the cupboards were bare. That's part of the reason why I was screaming, you need to go all in 2021, because you ain't got shit coming after this.
Right. I remember that. And I also remember too, we as a group were hot in 2022. They didn't trade for anything at the deadline. So you're a couple games back, but you got to go for it now with this group. And of course we got to 2023 and they weren't worth the shit. It was over.
Right. Right. And 2022, I think that's where you see the first signs. Well, where the signs really stood out for that lack of draftability before, because you had nothing to give up. That was the problem. You had nothing worth trading.
Yeah. Yeah. To get a big piece, you couldn't. It was tough to. Yeah, exactly. No, it was absolutely tough to do. All right. So you told me you got some White Sox hot takes you're saving for me. So I'm gonna. The floor is yours. I want 3 hot takes. All right. Well, this
Okay.
is good. Number 1 right now. Go ahead, Mr. Hen. Hot take from you, baby. Let's go.
All right. The first hot take is right now, White Sox fans should be kissing Tony La Russa's ass. And I will explain why.
Explain.
I will. Yes, everybody was all up in arms about, oh, how did you not take what's his name from Detroit now? AJ Hinch.
AJ Hinch.
Why didn't you hire AJ Hinch? Well, first off, if you knew anything about Jerry Reinsdorf, you knew damn well Jerry was never, ever, ever signing off on AJ Hinch. Jerry was a member of the competition committee for MLB at the time and a member at the board of the Hall of Fame. Do you think he wanted to go in front of those people and explain why the garbage can king is now working for his team? Think, people. Now, as far as La Russa, why they should be kissing his ass. Because La Russa is the one who came in and told Jerry, you need to fire these 2 morons.
Those morons being Rick Hahn and Kenny Williams.
Kenny Williams, yes.
Okay.
Yes. And if you remember correctly, back in 2023, I sent you guys a text from Cooperstown where I saw Jerry having dinner with Tony La Russa, Joe Torre, Walt Jocketty, and the wives. They were giving Jerry an earful. Why do you still have those 2 clowns employed? How do I know this? Because the table they were sitting at was right by the door to the bathroom. And I had to wait to get into the bathroom so I could listen a little bit.
I just envision you with the little tin can against the wall. Listening to shit.
Yes. And I do have a witness who was with me at that dinner. And if I need to, I will bring her out to further prove my point. But yes, that is number 1. Number 2, you recently called me a Hanbot. Okay?
Yes. Yeah. Well, yes, I was messing with you a little bit.
I know. But I will say this. I was all for the rebuild in 2016. The reason I was all for the rebuild, because I felt the White Sox finally picked a fucking lane instead of half-assing it. But what did they do? They half-assed the rebuild as well.
Yeah.
You know? And my opinion of Hahn and Kenny Williams turned with the Machado Bryce Harper fiasco.
Yeah.
You know, and for the folks that don't know, that's when I was labeled a man with questionable character, because I explained some simple math to some people who they did not like hearing simple math. Guess what? $300 million guaranteed is $50 million more than $250 million guaranteed. And you were asking Manny Machado to give up $50 million guaranteed for the possibility of making up to 35 more based on parameters that he didn't control.
Right. Yep.
So now, I don't want to say
that was good times.
Yes. I don't want to say this to sound bragging or anything, but I did spend 3 years at a Wall Street firm. Okay. One of the big ones. And you know which one it is, but I'm not going to go there.
Yeah.
I asked a couple of the guys that I know there. They said, there's no chance in hell I'm going to look at that deal if you're sacrificing possibly 50 million to make only 35 million more. He goes, if the numbers were reversed, you might look at it, but it gets ruled out right away when you look at the parameters involved.
Makes sense. I mean, great call, because I remember in the aftermath, so many people were just going straight to blaming the owner. And it's like, well, these guys misread the market. I mean, it's pretty obvious that they misread the market in this instance.
What a lot of people don't realize or don't want to accept. Yes, Jerry Reinsdorf has his faults. I've met Jerry on numerous occasions. I've had multiple conversations with Jerry. Jerry Reinsdorf is a nice man, is a salt of the earth person. As an owner, he drives me insane. But he's a salt of the earth person. Yep. And yes, you can separate one from the other. Jerry's done a lot of good for the city of Chicago that most people will probably never know. But if you remember correctly, Kenny, let me hide the shock in my eyes, Williams, talked about how he went to Jerry and said, this is the offer that will get us signed with get Manny Machado signed. and Jerry greenlit it.
Yep.
So to your point, yes, they absolutely misread the market. And frankly, to me, Hahn was an idiot, but I think Kenny Williams was the bigger problem there.
That's
After
what I
all
told
the
you,
stories,
Hanbot.
yeah, after all the stories that came out, after which I'll be honest, kind of pisses me off. After all the stories that came out after they were fired.
Yeah,
It's
nothing in the real time.
Right. This sort of proves my
Anonymous
point that I was
source.
saying all along.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah.
But so that was number 2.
That's number 2. What's number 3?
Number 3. Well, let's see. What was number 3? Getting old, I can't remember. No, number 3 is something we talked about a little bit before. Don't expect the White Sox to really do anything until after the labor stuff is settled. And I'll also tell fans this. By the way, you're going to get more T-shirts tossed to you once the Ishbia money starts flowing into the organization.
They've been a little short lately. It'll be good to see more merch going flying into the crowd.
Yes.
It'll be great.
Yes, but the other thing I would say is one of the things I had said for years is I always felt that the White Sox will host the 2033 All-Star Game because it is the 100th anniversary of the All-Star Game, and like next year in 2026, it's in Philadelphia for the 250th birthday of the United States. Yeah. So baseball really likes to stick to that sort of type of traditional thing. Yeah. 2027, it's going to be in Wrigley. Not officially announced yet, but it's going to be at Wrigley. So start saving your money now for tickets.
Get on 2033. I'm not sure. Well, even if we're still season ticket holders, they might not just give them to us for free. I'm guessing we won't be first on the list. We'll see.
And my other hot take, to be honest with you, is in a new ballpark, Section 108 is going to be like right behind home plate.
Son of a bitch.
Can charge the shit out of all of us.
God damn it. They're gentrifying us. That's what they're doing. We made the neighborhood popular and fun, and now they got to charge a higher price.
And you guys deserve so much credit for that. The three of you have worked your ass off doing that. I would say my sense some are more than you other two.
You son of a bitch. How dare you?
But no, you guys deserve a shit ton of credit for that because you've really turned it's more than just a section. I mean, yes, it's a section. You made a less desirable section, one of the most desirable sections in all of the ballpark. That's number one.
Try.
Yeah. And number 2, I mean, you've just built this community that is just incredible. And a lot of credit goes to you three for being as outgoing, as fun-loving, as welcoming as you have been. Because let's face it, I'm a crotchety old fucking get off my lawn guy.
Fit in perfectly. We needed that guy. We were desperately missing that guy. That's why you had to be part. That's the key there,
because I'm the guy you send when you want to get rid of somebody. I've had enough of this guy. Get the fuck out.
I understand. All I got to get lost, so we'll leave. The comments says it's not desirable when Wally turns into Walter. Well, that's for story for another time. We'll staff.
We're not going to go into the fables of Walter.
That's right. Thanks for sharing your thoughts on the Hall of Fame, MLB labor, and the White Sox. Remember, we ain't trying to be right at the show. We're just trying to understand. Mr. Hand, anything you want to plug before you go?
No, I think that's it. I will definitely be at Corks tomorrow to celebrate your birthday. And did you say fireball shots?
There are $5 fireball shots. Yeah, last time we did one of these, we did that watch. Barry Bag of Donuts must have bought 20 of them, and I drank a bunch of them as well. So I don't.
He won half the prizes too with all those tickets too.
He did. Got lucky. You get more raffle tickets for the more shots you buy. So that's
exactly.
That's a key. Mr. Hand, thanks so much, man. Appreciate
you for having me.
Love it. See you soon, my friend.
See you soon, man. See you tomorrow.
Yep. That was Aloha, Mr. Hand. That was good stuff. I did not know a lot of that stuff about the Hall of Fame and the labor thing. I'm not as scared as Mr. Hand is, but it is kind of scary looking out there. See what's going to potentially happen. Next week's guest, I have nobody booked for next week. because I think I'm going to do a solo one next week, because it's the 100th episode of the Au Jus next week. This was 99 all in. That will be 100. We'll talk a little bit about the episodes before and where we're going in the future. I've got some ideas, some thoughts, some things I have not started doing yet that I kind of want to bring out there to the audience. So thanks to Punky's Pizza and Pasta and all the One Only families up in the YouTube comments. Appreciate you smashing the like button, comments, drinks, and tips, of course. We'll see you tomorrow in person at Cork, and then we'll see you Thursday for the One Only podcast. Bye-bye, and I love all of you.